start with the NetBean here. I already opened it, so run that. Start with a new project. We are going to call this, is this week 8 or week 9? Week 8, right? Week 8, right. So we call this week 8. No space here, week 8. We need the main for that. Finish it up. Where's my coffee? Right. Okay, so we are ready to go. Today we're gonna work with a little bit more aspect of the classes. We're gonna talk about wrapper classes, and we're gonna talk about enumerated lists. What else am I gonna talk about? I'm gonna talk about aggregation of two classes, something like that. We're gonna go as we go. What we need to do before we start our main is I'm gonna go and create that old class of mine, rectangle. I'm gonna do it really quick because it's just for the purpose of demonstration. So I'm gonna go with the Java class and I'll create my rectangle. Really simple. So now I have two classes, one main and one rectangle. So in the rectangle, if I recall it right, we have 3 parameters last time. We're gonna call those. Those are private, obviously. So we're gonna start with the parameters. And those are private. Integer was width, if you recall. I'm using the same class for you to understand the concept and grasp the concept better. And last time, if you remember, we named those rectangles like a room or something. So we're gonna have name. So these are parameters for the my class rectangle. I'm making the blueprint out of this. Now what you need to do is create a construction or constructor. How we do that? We're gonna simply right click here, go insert code. Could you guys keep it quiet a little, please? Yep. So we're gonna do insert code and we're gonna go constructor. We learned what constructors are, how to make them. We don't need to do it manually, so we can just go there, insert the constructor. Want a constructor for all 3 of those initially. So this is the constructor. We're gonna use the shadowing, this, to link that local variable width with the parameters width, which is given. We also can have a couple of can overpopulate the constructor. We're gonna do that. We did all that. Just a little bit of review. We can simply go this 1 1 and default. This is my default constructor, which is the width and length of it is 1 and the name is default. So if anytime you run or call the constructor with no input, it gonna generate the object with the name default and the width and length of 1. We're gonna use shadowing for that. It's the same as I just put 1 here, 1 there, and the name default, right? So it's the same thing. I'm not doing it, but that's what I'm trying to tell you. Let's create another one for sake of it. This one, just gonna use my compiler because I'm lazy. I'm gonna go insert code, and for this one we're just gonna use length and width, no name, and then we're just gonna call this name equals to, let's call it generic. So generic rectangle is the rectangle with size and like length and width, no name. Then since these are private parameters, I am going to set my setters and getters method to get and set those parameters. It's a lot of work, but simply I'm gonna click here, go insert code, and here I'm gonna set getters and setters. So click on that, and I'm gonna set the getters and setters for all of those. Make my life easy. Done. So this guy gets the width. This guy set the width. This one get the length. This guy set the length. This guy get the name. This guy set the name. Okay, so since I'm having my getters and setters, if you recall, I had another method called that get area. And what was that? Was just returning the multiplication of width and the length. So that's what it does. Just that's how you calculate the area of rectangle. What else I need to do? All right. So if you recall, we had a static method before. I'm just gonna learn you how to get rid of that. If you recall that I have this static method called display, which is not part of the class. It is part of the class, but is not accessible when you're creating object out of this class. So let's say you have a dummy variable r as a rectangle input, and we just print out whatever you have here. Let's set the name. Alright, so we're gonna have the get name. Just minimize this or make it a little bit smaller. Alright, so this is like we've seen before. What we do, we just calling those method of get width, get length, and all that, and just display. Oh, not the name. Get width. Get width. With here. What else left? Then length. Alright, so we're using those methods to display. So every time I create the object, I can call this static method, which is accessible without creating an object, to actually print those. Right, so what we're going to do is this. So I'm going to leave it like that. This is what we created before. We have it from the last week, even I think that 2 weeks ago. You can just check it over if you need to. So we have this. Let's go test it out, see everything's worked properly. I'm going to go back to my VK8. And here, we're going to start. Before I start and create object out of my rectangle, I want to start with. Alright, so I'm gonna make it interesting because I'm gonna teach a couple of topics. I am going to write a method here. Call that public static void. Call that separator. And this takes the string. And basically just print the separator for my console that I can show you guys better with separation of the output. We're gonna have a dummy there. Okay, So what it does, we're gonna start calling that separator and call this topic. The first one I'm gonna cover is calling. Is that a typo? Alright. Alright, so separator. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call that static and instant methods. Alright, so I think. Alright, so what it is, let me just run that. There we go. So it's just kind of separates with my message that has this line. So whatever I write there, you can see what topic I cover when I'm done with the code. So in Java, you have access to some method instantly and also static method. So this is an example of static method. You can call it anywhere you want. The instant method, however, could be something like this. Let's go define the variable. One of the libraries always accessible in Java is math, and you can have access directly without importing anything. So let's say square root of 25, you can use that. So this instant method get the square roots of a number. So in this case 25. And then let's print it out. So we're gonna go var 1. So if you print that out, it should give me, here we go, 5. So this is an instant method example of it. The other one, which is we covered in Python before even, is you can generate a random number. So you can go to math, and there's a bunch of obviously function you can use. This random function, what it generates is a number between 1, 0 to 1. So if you print that, you're gonna have let's call it rand, and you can see a number between 0 to 1. Here you go. So this is what it is here. Obviously you can make it 2 significant digit, 4 significant digit, whatever you need, or you can use that as a multiplier to an integer to generate a bigger number. So it's up to you what you want to do. Go discover these. The math is accessible to you to use. So let's go now. When I did this, let's go cover. Let's have a separator and talk about passing object as an argument. So we did this before, but it's part of this chapter. It's just gonna kind of cover it really fast. We're gonna define our rectangle object. Let's call this what am I gonna call this, box, I don't know. And we're gonna go new rectangle. So I'm gonna call my first constructor. We're gonna send 1 and 2 as a length and width, and the name of this, let's say bedroom. I don't know, bedroom looks like a rectangle to me. It is rectangle. So here what we do, we creating an object named bedroom, right? So if you recall, I can go directly, I'm calling the class dot, and I have this display that I designed to show the box. So in that case, when I'm creating that object, send the box to this method display, which is right here. It gets that, this become a box, and they go get the name, width and length and area, right? So that's what we did. Let's test it out. Simply run it. Alright, so I see I don't have a space here. I'm gonna go fix that. So the name is bedroom 1 and 2. Alright, this is interesting. Alright, so let me go here in rectangle. So I don't have, you see there's a kind of couple of typo. Let's clean up a little bit of space here and there so we have a better looking output right here. Alright, so the thing we do is really necessary. Sometimes we don't want to see those objects but those parameters and such, and we have to display it. By default there is a method called a toString. toString basically is a string representation of an object. How that works. So here, instead of doing that, which is a lot of work, every time I can simply go here and let's just right click, insert the code, and go toString. You see that is right here. You can have a toString for any parameters or all of them like that. I'm gonna go all of them, and what it generates is the name of the class and each parameters of it like that in a string form. Let's say, okay, so let me do it again. So one of the things you can see, it says is overriding something. It says override. What does override? I don't want to override anything that I don't know, right? So let's just delete that and go back to my main before I'm overriding anything and just try to print or call. So we're gonna go box dot toString, and you see that method is over there. So we're gonna say it's a return a string representation of an object. I just said that. In general, toString method returns a string that textually represented this object. So let's just try that. So I'm just gonna call this without overriding anything. So right now I don't have that here. So let's see how that works without it. So I'm running it, doesn't show anything. Well, let's print it. So it doesn't print directly. Well, I'm testing things out. Let's say I don't know. Well, that's how you learn programming. So let's print it, see actually see anything. And it does. So what it does, it gives you the memory address, the class name, and this is a package name, right? So by default it gives you the package name, the class name, and the memory location of that particular object. But it doesn't give us the width, length, or any parameters I have in there. So you can modify this. How you do, you go to your class, you can type it. So, or I'm lazy, I'm gonna use my functionality, I'm gonna insert code and say toString. And for those, what it does now, it returns. So I'm overriding the toString method. So this is a word override. We're gonna learn about this more and more as we go into the classes. There's a lots of classes you can override and change it the way you want. So now instead of sending those addresses, we're gonna return the name of the class, width, length, and such. You want to modify that even more, do it. So you can say the length is whatever, or the width, right? So you can actually, it guess what you want to say, and you always can change those, as you can see. So now, a quick save, go back to week 8. This time, if I print it, let's see what's gonna see. Here we go. So I simply gonna have a string representation of that particular object I created. So in that case, I don't need to create, let's say, display that separately shows those. However, if you need to do it, do it. It's up to you. Depends on the application. Blah blah blah. Right. So this is a toString method to use and see what's going on with your object. So let's create a couple of more objects here. So we have a box, which is a basic rectangle. Let's have a default rectangle. Let's use other constructors. So we're gonna go default. default. How do you write default? I just forgot. Default. Nah. So I cannot use default as a name because it's a reserved word. We gotta purposely type it faulty. Not defaulty, faulty. Or maybe I just switch that. Or DFT, yeah, default. Sure. Lots of rules, right? So we're gonna have a default one. So just don't send anything. Just call it means the size is 1 and 1 and name is default. And we're gonna have another one. What do we call here? Generic. And this one doesn't have a name, just the size, right? So these are the using the constructors separately. I can print those, or I can simply go DFT dot. Okay, so we're gonna print DFT dot toString. So that's a string representation of this guy, and we are going to check also. We're gonna check the generic toString, and that is show me. Here we go. So this is my first one with 1 left 2 name bedroom. This one is 1 and default, and this is my generic 3 and 3. So we have those as well. All right. So let's say. How do you find these two objects? We have many objects. You might generate like many objects out of the class. How do I find that two objects are equal or the same? So obviously you can't really do this, right? So let's test it. So we're gonna have a rectangle. Let's call it box 1. A new rectangle. And this one we're gonna go 4 and 5. Let's call this room 1. And let's have rectangle box 2. And let's call this name room 2. So I have two objects. The only thing is different is the name of it. And I'm gonna just generate an object box 3. I don't want to just basically a variable that keeps the address. I just don't really create it here. So how do I find this box 1 and box 2 are the same? Can I do that? So box 1 dot equals. We learned the equal function or basically method before. We're gonna have box 2. Is this? Let's say these two are the same. Like now, does this show? So we're gonna print. Or the objects. So we had the equals for strings, right? Can I use that for object? Let's say else. There we go. So is that word? Like if I check these two, what do I see? Is that same or is not the same? Anyone can guess? What would be the output here?
Not the same.
Not the same, right? Maybe he's lying. Let's check him. I don't trust this guy. Yeah, it's not the same. Who can tell me why?
Not the same.
Because we comparing the addresses of these two, and obviously they are not the same, right? So in order to compare an object, you have to compare parameters with parameters one by one. So how do I do that? I'm gonna go to my method rectangle and create any kind of method here. So I'm gonna go here and let's do it manually that you guys get what I'm talking about. There's an easier way to do this, but let's do the painful way. So we're gonna simply create the object, not the object, the method, sorry, called a boolean return. Gonna say the object is the same or not. So we're gonna generate true and false for my need. So we're gonna call it equals rectangle, and we receive object 2, and I want to compare it with this object. So we're gonna have a boolean variable called status and act as a flag. So we're gonna set it as false. We're assuming they are not the same unless proved otherwise. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna say if the length is equal to object 2 dot get length, so we go to the object to get the length, and we have access to this parameter length because we're doing it inside this class. If these two are the same, and with equals to object 2 dot get width, all right, and this is an interesting part. So these two objects are numbers, right? So it's easily you can compare numbers to numbers, but the third parameter, which is the name, is a string. So instead of that, I can simply go and name dot equals. So I can use that equals. So you can define equals, ignore the case, or equals not ignore the case. We're gonna go equals object 2 dot get. I don't need to check the area or anything like that, right? So the parameters with parameters. Hold it. So the name is a string. Oh yeah, that it needs the return, right? So if those are the case, then I simply set the status to true. It's not Python. And here we're just gonna return the status. So this is called that. What this is all about. This is what all about. And we compare one by one and give the idea of yeah. So let's go back and check it here. So in that case now it's working properly. So when you're calling the equals, you're calling the equals we just created here, not the one that is predefined or instant method for strings. Okay, so now let's go back, and now we can rely on this. So if the objects are the same, see the objects are the same. If you change that to room 2, you will see that the object will not be the same though. Right? How do you copy an object? The copying also has to, I generate this box 3 and I want to copy box 2 to it. So how do I do that? I need to actually go to my rectangle and create a method for it. So what I'm gonna do is simply I'm gonna go here and let's generate another method called that copy. I guess that's the best way to go. So we're gonna go public. Guess what it returns? It returns an object rectangle, and let's call it copy. And what it does, it receives. So we're gonna create the copy object. So this is a dummy object name, obviously, and you're gonna create a rectangle out of those parameters: width, length, and name. So we create that and return it. Return that copied. Return that copy object. Alright, so what it is, when you're calling this, it takes those parameters, send it to the constructor rectangle, and then when you generate this dummy object, it returns back. If you go to week 8, you'll realize you can do this. So now you have box 3, we simply can do this. We can go and go box 3. Alright. Equals to, we're gonna set it to the box, let's say 1 copy. So what I'm doing, I'm creating the copy or duplicate or clone of box 1 and set it to the memory location which is I dedicated to box 3 previously. I have an error. What is the error? Yeah, I'm outside of the scope. So let's just take that. So go here. Yeah, I'm outside here. So we're gonna go box 3 equals to. I generate the box 3 earlier, and now we're gonna go box 1 dot copy. And that is, if I go now box print out, I can simply do that, right? So now if I generate the box 3, I can print out the box 3. So box 3 dot toString. So we're going to use that string representation of box. And then also I can do this. I can simply use this part, which is I just generated, to compare these two. And I can say, okay, check box 1 with box 3. Say they are the same. Both works validly and should show me the same result. Let's try that. So box 3 is okay. Let's try to print both of them next to each other. So this is box 3 and this is box 1. So in that case, both of them are the same, looks the same, and these are the same. So it tells me they're the same. So that's how you copy. Let's take a break, I guess, and come back and continue with a new topic after the break. So come back at 10 and we'll continue. Alright, so let's go back to this, finish it off. So we covered that how we copy an object and how I'll compare it and find out they're the same or not. So the next topic we're gonna cover is something called aggregation of 2 classes. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go here, I use my separator, and what we're gonna do, we're just gonna type aggregation of 2 classes. Well, what that even means? Let's go create a bunch of classes and learn that practically. Let's say I'm just gonna create some basic classes, not something complicated. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go Java class. Let's create a class that call it address. So I'm gonna do that, and in this class address, let me zoom in, get rid of this low, maybe make this smaller. Here we go. In the class address, we're gonna have a bunch of parameters. This is supposed to be a class that generates or creates address objects. What we're gonna do, I'm not gonna make it complicated using getters and setters. We're just gonna have some parameters in it because the idea is learning aggregation of two class. Streets, let's say they're not private, so they're public. So by default, if you don't mention anything, means they're public, so they can be accessed outside of this class if you need to. So we are in Canada, so we're gonna use province. If you're from United States, using states, guess what? And the country, so each address has a number, street names, city, province, country. And then we're just gonna have a simple constructor. I'm gonna do a little bit of lazy work. I'm gonna go insert code, constructor, and for all those, I'm just gonna create a constructor. Here we go. So basically what it does, we get all of those from the user and set it to those parameters. Simple enough. We need those. Since we are at it, let's set the getters and setters if you like. That's easy to do, right? So we gotta just insert again, and let's have it. I don't need it really, but it's a good habit. Just in case I want to make those private, I can use those to access those parameters. And let's have a toString since I'm at it too. I'm in the mood to use this. There we go for all those parameters. So there we go. So this is a simple class. It just hold the address parameters in it. So now let's define another Java class called a student class. So the idea here is we're going to aggregate these two classes together. So each student class has three parameters. There is a roll number, or basically is your student number, whatever it is. Each student has a name. So you have a student number, a roll number. In the database, they call it roll number. As you know, it's student number. There's a name associated with a student. And now this is interesting. Each student has an address. So I'm going to define the parameters as a object. So this is an object address. So this is called an aggregation, NDDR. So the type of this parameters, it's an object address, which is we name it ADDR, or address, short abbreviation for address. So that's called aggregation. So you have another class, you can use it as a parameters inside the other one. So let's have some getters and setters for those. So we're gonna generate those. So we get the rows, set the rows, get the name, set the name, and as you can see, the get address, it returns basically the address type object. So object from the address class, and here we just get an object to set it as those parameters. So this is something called these two classes aggregated. Let's see how this works when we calling or creating object out of each of them and see what it is. Let's go back to my main here. So we're just gonna go there. So aggregation of two classes. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna create a object from my class address. This is a separate object, so we're gonna go new address. And first we start with a street number, let's say 7508. And then we're gonna go Bayview Avenue. I don't know. This is not my address, don't go there. It's my previous address, so I don't live there anymore. You wanna go there, go there. I'm not there. Toronto. That's a city name. Ontario, it's a province. And Canada. If you need to use postal code, add to it is another parameters, whatever address you want. That's enough, I think, for the purpose of this demonstration. So this is my address. Okay, so there's a typo. I'm fixing that. And this, here we go. So this is my object add or add. So now I am creating another object out of my student class now, right? So this is an object out of my address class. I'm gonna create an object out of my student class now. So this is what we call that as students. Let's put it this way. And we're gonna go new, use a constructor. And student has an enrollment number, let's say is 12413, and the name, which is so Mike Barry. And now it accepts an object as an address. We create the object address up there, so we're just gonna set the add into the constructor of the student class, which I defined earlier here. So that's a one. Here we go. Where's my, oh, I totally forgot to create the constructor for that, right? So we're gonna go insert constructor, that and that. We're sending to the constructor that is not existed. So now it's existed. We don't need, no. We can do that too, yeah. Compiler do many good things for us. We just don't know it yet. Alright, so a typo. I wish the compiler could save or fix the typos, because I make a lot of it. Anyways, so let's just run that, see everything's fine, no errors, that's good. So now this is a fun part. I'm just gonna print it directly because for less confusion, because my parameters are public, so I can simply go print out. And we're gonna go std or student, and just, you see you have access to those three, so you can do the name. You can say okay, student name is this is done. No, that's plus. Yeah, I'm ready for Python. And you can do the student roll number is, let's say, you can use that directly, or you can use the get roll and get it. So if you want to make it private, you can do the private. That's the difference here. You can have a direct access to this, or you can use one of the getters to get it. And now this is a fun part. So we're gonna go with the address, and the address you can do this. So you can go std dot, and you have the address, but this is the object. So if you click on that, then you put another dot, and you have access to those other parameters. So you can start with the number. I'm gonna say so that's a number, and we can also create a space between, I guess. Then std dot, so the address dot, then street. Let's go to the next page. Not next page, next line, not next page. All right. Here we go. Add that. We're gonna go std dot ADR. So the street, so number street, province, and oh, this is private. Okay, province. And what we're gonna do is alright. So the last one would be address dot country. So I think that will work, but you never know. You're just gonna run it. So let's see what we can get. And here we go. So you have the student name, student roll number, and the address directly as a form of object, though. That's a good part. So if I change that to, I don't know, 9595, the roll number change here also. You can do that. Nobody showed up in my previous building right there. So this is called an aggregation. So you have one object, you feed it, let's say, or define it as another class parameter. It's a technique. All right. If you don't like this, you can make those private, obviously, and you can do that. So let's say I just want to get the. So this is just using directly the parameters. If you make those private, you cannot do that. You can use your getter. Say, okay, so if I want to get the country name, I can use this also. So we're gonna say std dot get address, and when you get address, then you're gonna go dot get country. So you can use those getters also to show those parameters. The same thing on that one. If you make those, where is it? Here we go. Address. If you make those, close it. If you make those parameters private, you cannot access those directly like that. So you can use this method. We're calling the getters method to get those without compromising the privacy of your. Here we go. So the country is Canada. All right. So last topic of this chapter I want to cover is something called let's have a separator. Enumerate the list. So what's that? So the definition of enumerated list is a list, obviously. So it's a special data type. So this is an interesting part. So it's a data type after all, and that enables for a variable to be a set of predefined constants. What that even means. So let's go define this. First of all, you're gonna take that because it's a special data. You can't really have it inside your class. You're gonna take it outside of your class. So we're gonna go all the way out. This is my class, which is week 8. I'm just gonna go outside. You can go on the top or the bottom, whatever you want, but it has to be outside of the class. We're gonna do. So the keyword is enum. for enumerated lists. So that's a keyword here, and let's call that list day. You can use for anything in series, let's say, or a bunch of names. You can be planets from Jupiter, Earth. I don't know the order. Jupiter is Mars, Earth. Yeah, like and so on. You continue until you can't really see anything. Or you can use it for month. You can use it for days. You can use it anything that kind of have a series behavior to it. So let's go for the days now. Let's say the week start. So we're gonna go Sunday, Monday. So you kind of name it, and as you can see, it turns green, means it's act like a parameters after all. So we kind of learning the color code of things. So blue means it's a reserved word, green seems like a parameter. Here we go. So we have a list, and we're gonna use a curly bracket and just separate it with commas, and we create a list. This is an enum list. You can make as many as you want, so there's no limit to that. But the good part is it kind of associates a number or ordinal to these names. So we're gonna start. Let's see what we can do with this. What I mean by the number and ordinal. So we're gonna go back here and try this. So what we're gonna do, we can define kind of a day as a type. So instead of doing integer or double or anything like that, or even object, you can call the list directly and create a, let's say, workday variable out of it. And then you're gonna say, okay, so what that is I'm gonna go day dot. So today is Wednesday, right? So when you say day dot, you have access to all those days, Wednesday, which is today. So today is a work day. It seems pointless at this moment, but sometimes become handy, especially when you want to design game. You want to have numbers, but you want to have the name associated with those numbers, right? So third day of the week. So let's say, what is Wednesday? Let's print it out. So if you print that out, you're gonna have let's say print work days. There's no S there. It's just work day because I only work Wednesday. That's all. Luxury. I don't, just Wednesday mornings, and that's it. The rest I enjoy my thing. No. There we go. So you see, you can see that Wednesday here. This is not the point of it, obviously, but this is a data type after all, and the only thing, you can do many things like that. You can manipulate those data or compare it. Now, what I mean by that is you can get something called an ordinal. We're going to set the ordinal value for, let's say, Sunday. So we're going to go day. We're going to directly call it. I don't need to. Let's go Monday. Sorry, Sunday. Is so the ordinal value for day.Sunday, just gonna print the name of it, and now we want to get the ordinal value. So it's gonna be is okay. So we're gonna go day, call the list, call the parameters here Sunday, and then you go dot, and you have access to a bunch of methods like compare to. You can compare the dates. We're gonna use those to get the idea of what it is. And this is what is like a little bit ambiguous, which is ordinal. So we're gonna get the ordinal of that, and let's see what it is. So what's the ordinal value of Sunday? So we're gonna check that, and it's 0. So okay, there's a lot of space I'm missing here. So space here, space there. Here we go. So your list actually numbered exactly like your string and arrays. Start from 0. The index is 0. That is day 0, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. It makes sense. There comes right after each other. If you're beginning of your day is Sunday, you can put the first day as Sunday and Monday and such. So if you can easily compare using that. So we can say, okay, if day Friday, so we're gonna get the Friday, compare it with, well, these are make sense because you know the weekdays, which one first and which one not. But if you have a list and you don't know what it is, and I can't really keep the planets in my mind, which one comes first from the sun and such, so you can use that to compare which one is the first, and so something like that. So compare to so I'm gonna compare Monday to if you recall, compare to does not generate Boolean, right? So there was equals that it gives you the yours the same or not, so true and false. But compare to always do that. If they are the same, generate 0. If it's one of them is higher than the other, positive, and negative otherwise, right? So they just do that. So we're gonna say if it's positive means what? We can say the Friday is greater than, which is it is in this case, right? Friday is after Monday. Sometimes. So we can say, okay, I know it's funny, but that's a principle of it. We're not here to so we're gonna do day Friday. Note that everything is capital in the list or in the enumerated list. So let's just do is greater than just using a couple of things, but the ordinal is the best way to go it with. So it gives it the order, right? So it gives you the list that with that the first one comes 0 and just the second one comes first. It kind of create it. So Friday is greater than Monday in a sense. Mathematically, it means like it's after Monday. Else, just gonna have it else because we have to. We're just gonna go. I'm just gonna copy that. A little bit of lazy work. I'm not lazy, but sometimes life is too short to type the same thing. Yeah, something like that. Oh, I think I messed it up. Every time I copy, I mess it up. Alright, so if that, else this, what happened? Yeah, I'm missing a scope here. I don't know why, but apparently I did delete it when I was doing this. So let's try it and see. So apparently Friday is greater than Monday. I didn't know. So if change the Friday to Sunday, what will happen is just gonna go Sunday is less than Monday. So it compares value wise with the name, associated name. So you can manipulate, compare, to make decisions based on those and such. So you can create a list that have some sort of order and use those orders and numbers to manipulate those. I think I covered everything in this chapter, so I'm going to stop here.